We have three amazing speakers today. We have Kelly. Kelly is a recruiting manager at BCGX, which is the Boston Consulting Group's data science and AI powerhouse. She has worked with BCG over 8 years, I assume, and she has overseen associate recruiting from the Boston office. She has also managed the campus recruiting at MIT, Brown, and Dartmouth across North America. We also have Lilian Vargas. Lilian is a results-oriented human resources and talent acquisition leader. She currently works at Elevation, and she is based in Florida. And we have Jose Mata, who's a senior diversity recruiting strategist at Vanguard. He's currently focusing on growing Vanguard's Latinx population. So great speaker to have with us today. He works across the organization to improve partnerships, hiring outcomes, and the overall success of Hispanics and Latinos throughout the attraction lifecycle. I think we can start with the questions. Let me just stop this share. So we have some questions that people send us throughout our social media to coming to our cafecitos, and I will speak on the cafecitos later after this. But if we can start, and I don't know, Jose, Lilian, Kelly, thank you. Hi, thank you for being here. I want to start with the great question that I myself, I'm an example of it. How can I break into tech with a non-technical background? What are your thoughts on that? I know, Lilian, you have your non-technical background. If you can kick us off with this one.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Happy to be here and happy to take the lead on this question. So I actually have 2 degrees in education. I worked for a long time as an educator. I taught English as a second language. I didn't know English when I first started school myself. Definitely thought I was going to be in education forever. But then I took a risk on an opportunity that broke me into tech. And so that would be my answer. I took a risk because I started working at a pretty small startup, and that got me into tech. It is a marketing automation company. There were definitely less than 50 people there. And it was something I really found really kicked off my career. It was definitely the right choice to make, but it was risky, right? So it was a startup. I didn't know if it was going to be a long-term thing. And so I did a lot of technical recruiting for a technical company. And it was by far one of the best decisions. But it comes with challenges. So I would say working for a smaller startup, you got to do a little bit of everything. You got to be willing and open to take on things that might not have been in your original job description. That is, if you got a job description. It's definitely rewarding. It was challenging, but it was rewarding, and I'm very thankful that I took the chance on that. So that would be my advice. If there's a smaller company that there's a chance it could be acquired, bought out, it could fail. But if you want to break into tech and you're willing to take that risk, I think it could turn out for the good, for sure.
Okay. And what about you, Jose? I know you have been into this industry for quite a while. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think Lillian came up with first of all, finding a company and kind of moving into it, right? So it could be a smaller company or whatnot. It's one of those things that there's, I think, different approaches. One could be finding a company that allows you to get into it. Like, so you can come in as an HR professional and then rotate into a different group. Like Vanguard does that. We have a rotational culture. So you can technically come in HR, come in as a client services person in the job, take tech boot camps, take courses, get sponsored, and then you can move over into tech. So I think that's one avenue, similar to kind of what Lillian was saying. I'm a big boot camp person, but more importantly, boot camps with career services. If it's a boot camp that says, hey, complete this and you're done, odds are they won't help you get a job. But there's so many boot camps now that are available that partner with employers like Vanguard, like others, that we want to hire that talent. So essentially find those organizations. And then honestly, the third option is do what we're doing right here. like network with professionals, like message me, Lillian, Kellen, Maka, everyone on here, like, hey, what advice do you give? Get that networking going, and that will let you find out which companies are willing to take chances on people without experience and which ones aren't, and making sure you're spending the right time networking with the right ones at
Okay,
that point in that career.
thank you. Kelly, what was your experience breaking into tech?
So, so I'm technically not I recruit for tech, but I certainly don't have a tech background myself. So I would never be hired by BCGX. But basically, I think for larger companies, from a recruiter perspective, at least for larger companies such as BCGX, who do require a tech background in order to kind of get your foot in the door for a lot of these data scientist roles, I think like a path like Lillian's is fantastic. I think going somewhere where you do have kind of the freedom to stretch your legs into more tech focused work, like startups are a great kind of, environment for that. I think getting a few years of experience there so that you do kind of develop that background to start is a great way to jump into perhaps larger tech firms that do look for that. Or even just we actually do have a few folks who taught them, because one of the part of our job requirements is that you need to know how to code in Python, for example. So I do know a few employees who currently are at BCGX who just taught themselves how to code. Certainly a challenge, but you can do it. And so that's another way to kind of get that profile.
Thank you. And following up on that, Mayela on the chat says, I did launch code, a free bootcamp that offers apprenticeship afterwards. There are nonprofit with classes in Louis, Kansas City, and Philly, and in case anyone is looking for one. Thank you, Mayela. Hearing that, Jose, you work at Vanguard, Kelly, you work at BCG, and Lillian, you work at Elevation, which is a startup. Do you find any differences between applying to a larger company and a startup? Jose,
Yeah.
I think you have a bunch.
Yeah, I'll take that one. Yes, there's no doubt about it. Like there is definitely a difference in application process and interview process. Typically, the larger the organization, the more structured it is from an application process. As I always tell everyone, especially if you're applying to a larger company, you don't want to get kind of lost in the shuffle. There really is going to Vanguard and seeing some other organizations. It's really easy to get lost in this big CRM shuffle. So go out of your way to network with recruiters, network with managers, find people that fit the job, that are doing the job that you're applying for, and send them a message. Because it's really hard to do it without kind of that extra engagement. And then for smaller companies, which I've supported in the past as well, I just tell people like take advantage of it being a smaller company. Like you might be able to ping the owner. Like you can find directors. Like when it's a smaller company, going out of your way to ping them kind of will, I don't want to say guarantee you an interview, but there's going to be a very high chance that someone's going to interview a person who went out of their way to ask questions to the owner of a small company. I promise you, our CEO probably will not respond if you send him a LinkedIn message, unfortunately, but take advantage of that for the smaller companies.
Yeah, and I think on that note, we do have a question on the Q&A. What sort of questions would you suggest asking a recruiting during like a 15-minute coffee chat that you have a space with them? What kind of questions would you like to be asked?
I love it. I love it when they ask me tough questions. I love it when they ask me about our DEI strategy. I love it when they ask me about attrition, company goals. Those are the questions that recruiters should definitely have prepared. It tells you a lot about the company, and in that way, I know this is a question for later, so I won't talk too much about it, but it helps to see if the things that they value are aligned with the things that you value and a place that you would be comfortable working at. Nobody has said it yet, but I think all, Jose and Kelly know this too. You are interviewing a company as much as they are interviewing you. And so it has to make sense for you. So those are the questions I would say. I love it when they ask me about that. Yeah.
Nice. So asking those difficult questions where you're like, whoa, I didn't expect this.
Definitely also, and asking, one of the things is, what I like it when they ask, what are some of the challenges that the person in this role will face? Also, what are some of the characteristics and skills that you that may not have been on the job description that the hiring manager might be looking for that would make this person successful. But I think that really opens up the conversation even more.
Yeah. Thank you.
For me, it's really just come prepared. Like I don't know if I have like a magic question or something that I love. I don't like getting in a conversation and being like, tell me about, obviously tell me about Vanguard and whatnot. Like that's kind of our
Yeah.
job, right? To do. But show that you've gone on our website, show that like we're doing this for a reason. So if the recruiter pinged you, that's maybe a little bit different. But if you're going out of your way to try to talk with me
Yeah.
and say, hey, I would love to pick your brain, come prepared. You'd be like, hey, I was on the website, saw this. What do you recommend? Like we want to help you, but we just don't know how to help you unless you give us kind of that ammunition to do it. So that's kind of the biggest thing for me.
Right.
I would definitely agree with that. And just to kind of piggyback, I love when a candidate comes prepared and has done their research, but there's I certainly know and acknowledge that our website is very vague. And so there's a lot of things like day-to-day, what does the job entail day-to-day that a candidate probably wouldn't get from our website. So love talking about that. Also, Lillian kind of mentioned it's like you're not the company is just interviewing you, you're also kind of interviewing to see if you would be a good fit. And I feel like some of the questions that help with that are, like what would make a candidate super successful in this role? Like what characteristics would make me successful in this job? And I think that kind of helps you pick up on what muscles you might be flexing day to day. And do you even enjoy flexing those muscles? And would you want to do that as a job? So.
Okay. Thank you. And following on that line, we received a question for what do I need to ask in my interview to see if my values align with the company that I'm applying for? Is it because we have our identities, we want to know about gender equality on the company, how they handle difficult conversations or difficult environments. Jose, I know you're an expert on diversity recruiting. What advice would you give here?
Yeah, this question is something that I would say is one of the most important questions and one of the most important parts of any interview. To Kelly and Lydian's point, like you're interviewing them and you're interviewing these organizations for culture. Am I gonna fit in here? Are they open to my beliefs? Are they open to who I am? So I think one of the things, like Lillian mentioned earlier, like, do they have a D&I report? What are their D&I strategies? Like that's important. ERGs. Do you have ERGs? What's your view on this? Those are small pieces. I mean, all of these other things, right? So, when you research the organizations, what are people saying about them? When you're contacting people that are similar to this job that you're applying, what do they look like? Like when you talk with them, ask them the hard questions. I always find that to be the most important part because everyone's website, right, is going to have all the beautiful stuff, right? No one has, no one's website says our culture is terrible, and many recruiters will never say, oh yeah, this culture stinks. Like that's not going to happen. So I always recommend, right, seeing what they're doing D&I reports. What are they saying to the market, and then try to communicate with people in the company right now. I'll tell you, when I was looking for Vanguard, because I started last year, I reached out to my network and I found, 2 people that are Latinos that work at Vanguard. And I said, all right, I would love this conversation. Let's talk about it. How do you feel? What have you seen? And that really helped me make my decision. So that would be my biggest thing. It's understanding, unfortunately, right, that the company is going to be as pretty as possible, but asking hard questions and then trying to connect with people that work there right now. And if you want to really get tricky, find people that used to work there. That's really when you get some really good gossip. But talk to people, and they'll give you the truth.
Thank you. Thank you. One other question we received was, do you have any recommendations to break into a target company? Kelly, I know BCG is one of those companies that people really want to work for. Do you have any advice for people that have a target company in mind?
Yeah, I do. I certainly do. So I think I know this is probably beating a dead horse, but like networking is really helpful, even at larger companies. If you do know someone, it certainly can help you get your foot in the door. I think otherwise, something that's really helpful is just looking at whatever role you want to fill at your target company. Like let's just call it for BCGX a data scientist, and kind of read through what skills you would be what toolkit you would need for that job. And then probably it's not a short-term goal, it's more of a long-term goal, but then using like a few years in a different company to kind of train yourself on those that toolkit and those skills. That way, when you do interview for like a BCG or a Google or what have you, you already have that toolkit kind of built out, because transparently you do need it for the job. So that'd be my best bet, or my best kind of advice. Is it's a longer term goal, but certainly attainable.
Yeah. Okay, so we have a couple of questions about salary. So I want to kick this off with what things should we have in mind to negotiate that initial salary once we receive that offer, where we just want to take it, but at the same time, we really want to be mindful of what's my worth, how are they perceiving it? What would be your advice here? Maybe Lillian, you can kick us off with a startup conversation.
Sure. So currently I work for, Elevation, and we have a pretty good idea of what salary should look like. So we have a salary range for every role. So we do target the median of that range for whatever role we're hiring for. But even in our job description, we have our salary range, and we say that explicitly. But we also additionally say, we also consider candidate experience, and it's always open for us to have a conversation about it. Different companies differ on that, right? So sometimes the salary is the salary that you're going to get. But I think it all starts again with like the kind of a theme that we're also trying to reiterate here. Come prepared, make sure you read the job description, check out Glassdoor, see what similar positions might be making, come prepared to maybe understand a little bit about what's expected in terms of what the company will pay. But I think you should be very confident when it comes to that conversation. If you get to that final stage, you're really excited, you're about to get an offer, or even before that, when you're doing that initial screen call, I would say don't disclose what you're currently making at this point. I firmly believe no recruiter should ever ask you that. But when they tell you, does this meet your expectations, you can say something within that, or I'm looking at the higher end of that. You want to be very careful about what you say, but I would say absolutely do not tell them what you're making currently, because they're going to try. I think most companies will try to stick to their budget and save money. But that would be my advice.
And I can jump on that one if that's okay, because to Lillian's point, I think one of the pieces that people struggle with is when they're negotiating, they'll say, well, I currently make X, and that because of that, I'm looking to make Y. Yeah. In Massachusetts, and I know I have some other Massachusetts recruiters on here, so let me know if I'm wrong about this, but I'm pretty sure I'm right. Massachusetts, it's illegal for a company to force you to disclose what you're currently making. So when you're going through these conversations, simply focus in on what you want, and focus in on what you're hoping for. And to Lillian's point, like, oh, that's that's on the low end of my range, high end of my range. But always focus it on what you want or what you're hoping to gain versus comparing what you currently make and disclosing that, because then, unfortunately, the way recruiting works is, to Lillian's point, people are trying to save money. So if you make a certain amount, they'll be like, all right, well, this is a 14% raise on what you're making right now. Like, that shouldn't matter. So keep it direct to what you want, and that'll make you a lot of money. And the reason this came out was because of discriminatory practices. Just because usually people of color and diverse talent start at lower salaries, thus it gets used against us in salary negotiations for the future. So exactly what Lillian said. I just legally, Massachusetts is doing a good job with it. So I'm happy to hear that.
And then, for example, for like a BCG, we don't really negotiate salaries. So for X role, you get X salary, and there's not much wiggle room. But I think in those cases, you can certainly ask for like the larger compensation package and discuss that as part of like some of the benefits, because it's not just base salary. We have a bunch of bonuses and certain things that contribute to that as a package as a whole. And then I do think that just asking then for companies that won't negotiate, then just asking for a trajectory. and kind of seeing, okay, well, if I have to come in at this base and it's not negotiable, then what would I be making, in 2 years? And is early promotion available, for example, for BCG? It's not really, but we can at least give you, like if you are successful in the role, in 2 years, you'll be making X, in 4 years, you'll be making Y, and kind of walk you through what that would look like. So it's just helpful for like long-term planning, I suppose.
Thank you. And on that note, how would you think it would be best to bring up a salary raise conversation? Because if imposter syndrome comes into the negotiation part of it, it really comes on the I want to get a raise. How would you think it's the best way to approach that with your manager, with your HR person? What do you think it's the best way to go there?
I think with this, I can start. I think this is something you can bring up as a part of your interview process, similar to what Kelly's talking about, right? Like when you're going through your interview, how do raises work? Is it percentages? Is it lump sums? Like Kelly, to that point, organizations have levels. So hey, I'm currently at this level. You can go to this other level. Other companies I've worked in the past did a whole presentation on, all right, you come in as a consultant, and then you can go into this and this, and they won't exactly talk about, at least historically for me, we won't discuss what the next level salary band is, and but just know that people in organizations should be able to give you an idea of, hey, we look at salaries this time of the year, typically it's X amount, or at least give you some good information on that. Because other companies, they'll even say, oh, we don't really give raises unless you get promoted. And like, that's important to know, right? Like, it's important to know what salary, what goals are. So that would be my advice.
Thank you. Okay, so Lillian, I know you mentioned about ranges. How can I make sure I don't lowball myself? How can I assure that, okay, I'm on the mid range, or I'm on the higher end of the range?
Yeah, so you could Google it. You can Google the position that you're interviewing for, or if you're asking for a raise later on, definitely Google what the national average salary for your position is. There are things to consider, right? So if it's a remote company, depending where the company is, sometimes they base salaries on national averages. Sometimes it's based on where that company is located, which sometimes, thankfully, that might be a little bit more than where you currently live, but that's not always the case, right? So do some quick Googling and see what the national averages are, to kind of move it around to see based on your years of experience. I think it also depends on whether you know the range beforehand or not, but hopefully they'll disclose that to you. So try to shoot for the moon is what I say, and be confident when you come back and have conversation based on my years of experience and the things that I can deliver. This is the salary range that I would be looking for. Definitely be confident and be prepared when you're coming into that conversation.
Thank you. Okay, going off of the salary questions, if you have more, drop them on the Q&A, please. But I have a good one. Do you think cover letters are important? Are that important? We got a couple of questions about cover letters. Is it a yes?
You might get a different answer from every recruiter you talk to, honestly.
Yeah.
Okay, let's do it then.
Personally, I always tell candidates, thank you so much, but don't waste your time. Just because unless you do have some sort of extenuating circumstance in life that perhaps you would like your resume, you feel like your resume may not fully cover, and you kind of want to perhaps elaborate on it.
Maybe a career change?
Totally. Yes. I think that's well within that kind of category, but personally, we never read them. And I actually think this is hot off the press. BCG for our applications is going to get rid of even an option for a cover letter in the next year or so. Make it optional. Right now, it's like required as part of submitting an application, but we don't read them. So if you would like to, and it gives you peace of mind, great. If not, then don't sweat it. It won't be like a mark against you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I can add to that because I haven't read many cover letters. Like I've been in recruiting for a decade. I haven't really read many. What I will say though is to your point, I think writing a cover letter that discusses the things that aren't on your resume is
Mhm.
important. I would argue get it on the resume. Like
Okay.
whatever you think needs to go in a cover letter that can't be explained in the resume, I would just push back and say, figure out a way to get it on the resume, because that's how I'm gonna really read it. And maybe you can put a note on there like, I went into more detail in the cover letter. So you can almost leave
Mm.
like a teaser on there, looking for this, I've done so much. For more detail, look at the cover letter thing. But yeah, I just put on the resume as much as you can, and then tell a story. What you don't want to do is just like re-highlight your resume on a cover letter that I won't read. I don't want to read it. I got the resume for that.
Can I
But
ask a follow-up question about that? So in terms of the resume, the recommendation for someone who is not senior is to have only one page resume. But if you want to add
Yes.
all of those details, how you do it in just one page?
so I disagree with that. I think that's a really old school thought process on resumes. I think when you're leaving college and leaving school, it shouldn't probably be longer than a page, just because most people don't have that much experience, but you might get this answer differently from everyone as well.
Mhm.
I can't put my everything on one page. It's physically impossible for me to put it in one page. Try to limit it. You don't want a 5-pager. I always try to tell people try to do it in 2. Um, but I believe that the one-page resume is a thing of the past. It doesn't really do you justice. Um, Personally, that's my thought. You can always provide links if you really are stuck with a one page, or certain companies require the one page, like put a link to your portfolio, put a link to your, like, you can definitely link it up if you want to
Mhm.
other things. But I've never turned somebody down because they had a longer than one page. Don't do it 12 pages, but put on there what needs to be put, in
Stay
my
to the
opinion.
1 to
Yeah.
3 area.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I come from I come from academia where it's like multiple pages. It's a CV, tons and tons of pages. Also, absolutely, you have to write a cover letter. I used to teach a course on how to write a cover letter. I do not read cover letters. Like I don't have time. Like there was one role that's been open for like a month I have right now. I have over 1,000 applications for it and I'm still going through them. I am not going to read that any cover letter. We do have a little box, right? Depends on the applicant tracking system that the company you're applying to uses. There's a little box and it says cover letter, I think, or tell us about yourself as well. Feel free to pop something in there. I'm going to read it because I love my applicant tracking system and it's just quickly, I see your resume, I see everything you answered, you move forward or you don't, right? I do read those, but a cover
Mhm.
letter that I have to download and click a bunch of, no, it's not gonna happen.
Interesting. Thank you. How would you like to be approached as a recruiter? Via LinkedIn, via email? Do you think it's acceptable cold messaging? How do you feel about that? And how do you know if you're reaching out to the right person?
I
I
can
don't know,
start with this
Kelly,
one.
at
Or,
BCG,
yeah.
people would put their contact, or how does that work?
I was pausing to answer because I think this is a typical BCG answer, but it depends who you're reaching out to. For example, I mainly focus on campus recruiting. So campus recruiters will not operate on LinkedIn pretty much.
Okay.
There's no need for us to. We kind of have our campus contacts. We'll reach out directly to those folks. However, a lot of our experienced hire recruiters, they solely operate on LinkedIn until the candidates in our applicant tracking system. So that would definitely be the best way to reach those recruiters for sure. I think even then, at larger companies, it's really hit or miss. Like those folks, even myself, I'm not even an experienced hire recruiter, but I'll get like hundreds of messages a week and I'm just transparently not going to respond to all of them.
Okay.
I'll do my best to kind of forward along if I think that the applicant is, someone that we would be interested in, but LinkedIn's probably the best, but it's still a shot in the dark unless I feel like know someone personally.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I can jump on that one. Because yeah, to your point, Kyle, I think that's a great call out. Like certain people live on LinkedIn and some people don't. It's like figuring out where, like to Kelly's point, it might make more sense to go to your campus event, right? And I don't know if so if you're early talent, go to the campus event if
Mhm.
you want to get in the company, versus messaging on LinkedIn. I'll say I love LinkedIn. I'm one of those people that live on LinkedIn connecting with people. So which is why I just posted my my LinkedIn on
Thank you.
there. I also posted a link to one of our basically joining our talent community.
Mhm.
I do believe that that's also a really good way to start this. If somebody fills out and joins a talent community, applies to a job, like something, like go and make an active step towards applying to BCG or applying to Elevation or applying to Vanguard, and then sending me a note and saying, hey, I applied to this job. Can you help direct me to the right person?
Okay.
I always tell people, like, don't assume that I'm the right contact. Like,
Okay.
assume that I'm just there to help you.
Mhm.
And because it's a lot easier for me to say, hey, that's not my job, it's Kelly's. And then
Mhm.
just, I'll give you Kelly's name and boom.
Mhm.
I don't like when people are like, hey, I applied to this job. Can we connect and talk about it? Because I'm like, especially my current job now, I really
Okay.
don't know it, but I can
Mhm.
direct you to the right person who may. So that would be my approach, is to find where the people are. So if that's campus events, whether it's LinkedIn, find that out. And then when you message people, don't just assume they're the right contact. Say, hey,
Okay.
can you connect me to the right person? Any advice? I applied to this job, XYZ.
Thank
Same.
you.
Please connect with me on LinkedIn. I love it. I will try to respond to you, but it's really a lot, like you were saying, Jose. I mean, it can be a hit or miss at a larger company. Also, when there's just like tons of roles open, same thing. We have four recruiters right now, so I might not be the right one.
Mhm.
But I'm happy to connect you. I do love it when they do, like, I just applied. I'm really excited. That makes me feel like, oh, great. You actually took the step to apply, not like, let me find out some more. It's like, no, you apply, have your preparation ready, be prepared, have your resume ready, do the thing, reach out. I will connect with you. But again, larger companies might be more difficult, but
Mhm.
yeah.
I promise you, if everyone in here applies to a job at either of these companies and then sends us a message that says, hey, really enjoyed listening to you at Latinas in Tech, I applied to this job, we will get you in contact with the right person or right recruiter. So yeah, I love it.
You can also add me on LinkedIn and add me to the conversation. I'll make sure they answered.
And in
um,
the same line, I have a follow-up question. So in the
yeah.
same line, it's better to network with recruiters or with the hiring managers or people who work on the same role?
Yeah, should we contact the hiring manager or the recruiting manager? I mean, or the recruiting person. That's a good question, Maka. Or both.
So it's really hard to find a hiring manager. Um, like I don't think most jobs post that it's reporting to Lillian.
Mhm.
Um, I I can go either way on this, to be honest with you.
No.
Um, I have reached out to managers in the past, and I do think it shows initiative. Um, but at the, if they're I don't know, I can go either way. I would honestly say do both. Why not? If you just send a message to the manager and then send a message to a recruiter, someone's going to get back to you and someone will provide. Because what could also happen is a hiring manager gets your resume or LinkedIn and sends it to the recruiter, and then the
Right.
recruiter can just be like, oh, I already got it.
Mhm.
So why not both?
Yeah.
Okay. I have one, and then we'll do quick ones just to close up this on a happy note. This one is, how do you assess a company that is lacking in their diversity, but they recognize that they need to improve? How do you assess their intention to improve, grow, and be better?
Yeah. That's a great question. I kind of going back to what I said before, come prepared with those questions and don't just, have follow-up questions. What are your current DIE initiatives? We don't have any right now, but we recognize that what steps are you taking?
Mhm.
What does that plan look like in the short term? What about your long-term goals? And then at some point you're going to have to, really ask yourself, is this a company that I'm willing to join, believing that they are going to follow through with that? Am I going to be okay with this for the short term? How am I going to follow up with them? You have to ask yourself if you're okay with the answer that they give you, which I know can be tough, right? Because
Mhm.
you don't know until you walk into a situation and you finally are there. So
Yeah, to add to this one, this is a tricky one, right? So like you have the option of going to the company that, is perfect, amazingly diverse and has, all these setups, but I would say not that many unfortunately exist right now. And I think a lot of people are trying to get there. I would say with like Vanguard specifically, we're one of those companies that weren't very diverse up until 5 years ago, if not a little bit more. And to that point, Lillian, like we are now posting our DE&I report publicly. We're giving it out at conferences. We're kind of clearly defining what we're doing it, how we're doing it, and that we're tracking it. So even though historically, unfortunately, we haven't been very diverse, we are taking those steps, right? We can answer those questions. And I think more companies should have those answers. Like I do tell people, like, be a part of the solution. There's that comes with challenges in certain places, but let's be a part of the solution. And if they're willing to go with us and be with us on this journey, let's help get people there. That's at least the mindset I take when it comes to this topic.
Thank you. This is a good one. What is the best way to get past the first pass in a resume review? So should we add those key elements that were on the job description? Should we just have it on one page? What are your tips to get past that first review?
Sorry, go ahead, Lillian.
no, go.
I was just gonna say, I think this is another one where you're probably going to get very differing answers just depending on firm. And I think like for more startup-y places, they're just trying to fill one role. So they could be, right? Like it's, you are trying to fill this specific role. And so you have a niche set of something you're looking for. Whereas for like more evergreen roles for larger companies, like we always have the data scientist role open at BCG, even if, we may be pausing recruiting at certain points in the year. And for that, like the range of skills can be slightly wider, I suppose. I think though your best bet again is to go back to the job description and kind of see what they're looking for, and maybe pick out 3 or 4, not even 3 or 4, like 2 to 3 kind of words or phrases that you see that the company is like needing in a skill set, right? And then try to incorporate that into your resume. I mean, obviously don't lie. But if you can, like, there's like a 15-point list of things that the company's looking for that role, and you identify with a few of those, pick those, put those into your resume, kind of tailor it for that role specifically. Because transparently, like when I go through resumes, and I am biased towards a 1-page resume, but I will look at multiple page resumes. It's truly, and this sounds mechanical, but it is at a certain point when you have thousands to look through. I'm maybe devoting 15 seconds per resume, and I'm looking just to see if you have, is Python on there? Do you have any sort of data science experience, software engineering experience? Have you built any sort of models in your past experience? Like I know what I'm looking for, and I'm just looking to see that. And I'm sure it differs for other companies what they're looking for, but sorry, I'll stop rambling. But it's a very nuanced thing, I think, and it's dependent on role and company.
100%. I need to see those keywords from the job description in your resume, because I will be 100% looking for them. Not everything word for word, but obviously, do you have the years of experience? If, a role says you have to have had 2 years of software engineering experience, I need to see dates on your resume. You might think that's silly, but I've been getting a lot that don't have dates. I have to go on LinkedIn and I'm like, you don't have that. So, so clicking out is like a kind of a deal for me, but I'll do it, right? Because I want to give everybody a fair chance. I read every single resume, but it's just
even the 3-pagers.
Even the 3-pagers. we're scrolling.
Yeah, and I'll add to this is just exactly what Lillian and Kelly said. Like Control F is our friend.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
Control F, a role opens, we will control find certain things. So when you're writing your resumes, I always think about it like write it like a recruiter is going to read it, and keep in mind that the recruiter has minimal time to read through your resume. So there's a lot of jobs, a lot of applicants, and we have very minimal time. So how do you make it easier for us to read it, and just know that we're going to control F Python, we're going to control F .NET, we're going to control F these things.
Mhm.
So when you're writing your resume, keep that in mind. And even as simple as making sure you go into detail. So like if you said build a web application
Mhm.
that did this, make sure you put using Python,
Yes.
.NET, Java. I mean, get annoying with it. I'm fine with
Mhm.
people that get annoying with it. Just like put all of it, because it pops up and it helps us kind of see that you did something, but then also the technologies you
What
used.
you did.
So that's control F. Just know that that's how half the time
Yeah.
we are doing stuff.
Okay, so true or false? Is it true that recruitment software filters out resumes? True or false?
What is that? Like,
That sometimes recruiters could use a software to rule out any resumes.
ooh, I'm sure they can. We don't do that.
Okay, so
As far as
false for elevation.
I don't know of any software that immediately rejects people. So typically that is a manual task
Mhm.
that like you may go into an ATS and it may not like certain ATSs will say that this person fits 100% or 70% or 60%,
Yeah.
but there's no like automatic rejection from
Okay.
what I know. I have seen questions like on LinkedIn, you might ask like 3 questions. Like it might just be like 3 basic, do
Mhm.
you have this experience? Do you have that experience? And maybe that could have like an auto trigger that says, okay, if they don't get 2 of these 3 or 3 of these 3, we have to reject them.
Mhm.
But I don't know of any ATS, or I haven't worked with any ATS that just like you apply and it immediately doesn't even get to the recruiter.
Yeah.
I've never seen that. I don't know if y'all have.
I know that on Well-Found, formerly AngelList, we cannot hire anybody outside of the US, so it will automatically not show me those
Mhm.
applications because I did toggle that feature on. We use Lever as our ATS, and I know that we can set up workflows that, depending on how you answer a question, it'll tag something on your profile saying, oh, they don't have X, Y, or Z.
Mhm.
So it'll be easier for us to be like, this is going to be archived for now. But yeah, Jose, I don't know if it automatically like archives them or puts them not in front of me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Same
And
for us,
yeah.
just for what it's worth. We look through every resume.
Sorry, what was that?
I was gonna say, same goes for us. We look through every resume. Like it's a person
Yes.
scrolling through it,
Yeah.
not software.
That's great. Just so you know, on the comments we got, I'll be honest, out of all of the career panels I've been on, recruiters seem the happiest. So thank you for your good vibes on this.
Thank you guys.
Yeah.
And I just want to close up with this question, which I think was great, and each of you can answer it. What was the toughest questions what has been the toughest questions that you've been asked by a candidate in a meeting or an interview? Lillian, can you start?
Absolutely. So it happened quite a few times in the past couple of months regarding just economic situation within the company, the recession, potentials for layoffs. And again, obviously this is going to depend on the company, how you're going to answer it, but we've done a really good job of preparing for just this, because I mean, I think everybody is kind of thinking about it. It's top of mind. So us in particular, Elevation, we were acquired a couple of years ago by a parent company, but we operate independently. And so because of that, we were able to, be confident in the fact that we have this financial backing. We feel really comfortable. We are in the space. We had an amazing year last year, and I, have numbers that I'm able to share with them about it. And I say, we feel really confident and really excited about all the growth that it's upcoming, and we have lots of roles coming up for the remainder of the year. So, they can choose to believe that or not, right? But that's our reality. But it's a tough question. But that's been the toughest one that I've faced, because I feel that, like, I don't even know if maybe over 50% of the people that I talk to for specific roles have been laid off.
Yeah.
So they're feeling some kind of way. So I just try to talk them through it and listen to their questions. I think that helps to ease their mind as well. People really just want to be listened to.
Thank you. Kelly, what was your toughest question?
I was honestly, when he said that, I was like, I feel like maybe this is a positive. I feel like I've been doing it for long enough where I don't think, and like I'm an open book. I'm happy to chat about anything. So nothing feels like too tough. But I do think, to Lillian's point, similar questions I've received are like, if I'm not, meeting the bar, if you will, like what happens, I guess. So it is like has to have to do with like transitioning out of the company and how that works. It may not be tough. I'm transparent about it, but it's certainly not like a pleasant conversation to have. And yeah, it's similar, like walking them through, we have certain review cycles and you do kind of have to meet a certain skill set and we do have to see you progressing. And if not, you basically have to more or less, there's some wiggle room, but like every 2 years-ish, you should be, growing enough where you meet the bar to get promoted. And if not, there's a lot of companies like this, you are essentially asked to leave. And so walking through kind of like, how does that work? Like, what are our kind of alumni services and career services that, help you figure out your next step? Or like, how does that even review process work? And how much, like a lot of times the candidates worry, how much transparency do I have into this? Is this out of nowhere? Or, am I privy to all this going forward? And that's, I think, somewhat calming for them in a sense, because I do believe that we are kind of transparent with that. You have a career development advisor at BCG that kind of is your one constant and walks you through your reviews and where you need to improve and where you're doing well, and checks in with you every few months. So you do have that transparency. So it's not, yeah, I mean, again, happy to talk about it. It's not always like the fun conversation to have, but that's probably the one that I enjoy the least having. But
I'm sure. Thank you. What about you, Jose? What was the toughest one?
So I'm a little bit with Kelly that it's not. I don't think a question's hard. Like I'm not. I don't look at our conversations as like a test with like a right or wrong answer. I look at it as just like I either know the answer or I don't know the answer. So there's a lot of things that I get asked that I just don't know. And it's a lot of those like what's gonna happen in the future, and like I don't know.
Yeah.
I would say some of the harder conversations I've had though has been around vaccination policies,
Oh.
and the pandemic and return to work and what's the plan. And I'm like, I can tell you what I've been told thus
Yeah.
far.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't mean that it's not going to change in 6 months. Like I could the 2019 and beyond, or 2020 and beyond, like those are the hardest ones because they were unknowns. They were flat out unknowns, and to me those are the hard questions, are things that I can give you advice on and say what's historically happened, but it doesn't mean that the future is going to be the same.
Yeah.
So those are tricky questions. Those are the trickiest ones,
I'm sure.
for me.
Okay. I want to be mindful of the time that we have. We had so many questions, and unfortunately, we couldn't get to each one of them. But I'll take your Jose and Lillian's and Kelly's point. Please reach out to them via LinkedIn if you want to ask a follow-up question. Thank you, Jose. Thank you, Lillian. Thank you, Kelly. Thank you, Latinas in Tech, for doing this. I think it's important to see real people doing what we want to do if we want to be into recruiting, or asking those questions that we're not really comfortable asking within our same companies, or if we're looking for a new job. So thank you so much for participating. For the ones on the chat, or for our attendees, thank you for being here. Thank you for taking the time. Just so you know, on the chat we have thank you so much. It's so helpful to have someone to ask these questions and get them answered. But yeah, thank you so much. For the remaining one, for our participants here, we have a cafecito in June. Let me just share this with you again. We have our next cafecito on June 1st. We're going to do it on the Esplanade to enjoy this amazing weather that's starting. And then in July, we're also doing a cafecito outside, joining the Tito Puentes Hispanic music series. So please come if you want, and if you want to meet us. It's a great way to network, get to know other Latinas in tech. So that was it. Thank you so much for your time and for being here, and hopefully we can connect even more. Thank you.
Thank
Thank you. Thank you.
all.
Thank you all so
Thank
much.
you.
Great to see you all.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
We're good to draw. Yes.
Thank you
Okay.
for coming. It was great, really good.
Thank you. You guys are the best. Thank
Good
you
job.
so
No, thank
much.
you. It was such a pleasure to honestly, I love this stuff. So thank you all for
Yeah.
including me. And nice meeting you, Jose.
Yeah, I was gonna say, Kelly, nice to meet you.
Thank you. Thank
See
you.
y'all
Have a
later.
good day. Bye.
All right, bye.
Bye.